Mom, you need to know I date women. I told my mom this over the phone my first year of college about 20 years ago after meeting Peaches Freed. Everyone called her Peaches in honor of her being crowned Peach Queen in her agricultural hometown's Peach Queen pageant. I had seen Peaches on campus, her blonde curls illuminated by the autumn sunlight as she effortlessly jogged across the rugby pitch. And about 5 minutes later, we were dating. So when my mom asked me, "Have you been seeing any guys lately?" I told her the truth. By far the more shocking statement was spoken by my mom when she said, "I've been through this before. I had a gay mother. Honey, I gotta go." Now, Grandma was everybody's favorite. She would come to visit us and bring us groceries, and so proud of her home state, she would only buy produce in New Jersey and haul it to Cape Cod, where we lived. "Nothing like Jersey jumbo eggs," she would say, with her signature grin, with a big white cat teeth, so proud. And she would roll her El Toronado, a big boat of a car, up the driveway, but not just up the driveway, she would actually roll it onto the front lawn so she could get the groceries as close to the house as possible. And when she came inside the house, she made a motion that my siblings and I responded to like Pavlovian dogs. She was going to give out money, $5 to each kid. And we wrapped our arms around Grandma, and she was stout. She was a little taller than me and a lot more round, the figure of a woman who loved spaghetti, donuts, candy bars, and 6-packs of Schlitz before she got sober. Now, Grandma's maiden name was Coochie, and despite being briefly married to my mom's dad and taking the name Becker for the rest of her life, I like to call her Grandma Coochie. So Grandma Coochie worked for AT&T all of her life. She started off as a switchboard operator and rose in the ranks to become an executive. She loved polyester suits with elastic waistbands and pleats. And when she came to visit us, she would wear her suits, but instead of wearing dress shirts under the blazer, she would wear kind of obscene-ish t-shirts. Like one that had 2 images of King Tut that said, "Don't touch my tuts," across the top. She loved a little profanity. She hated cats. She rooted for the Mets, which is probably why she needed a little profanity. She wrote poetry, and she thought that no vacation was incomplete without getting a sunburn where she sort of looked like a lobster. But most of all, she loved her daughter and her grandkids. And I had no idea she was gay, and she died when I was 11 years old. So when I learned the truth, I wanted to know everything about her. So I called her brother, my great uncle Al. Now Al, everyone knew he was gay. Al was a skater in the Ice Capades, famous for his camel spin. And after retiring as an ice skater, he became a hairdresser in New York City and did Michael Jackson's hair a couple times. And Uncle Al's favorite joke is that when he dies, printed on his casket will be the names of all of his plastic surgeons. He always liked to point out seamless. 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 So when I finally got a chance to sit down with my great Uncle Al, I asked him about his sister, my grandma. And he told me Grandma Coochie was a real smooth ladies' lady. Honey, she could pick up women at church. All the married women executives at her job always wanted a little piece of Grandma Coochie. He even hinted that she might have fallen in love with one of them. And then he said, and honey, she knew all about you. And he threw his head back dramatically, fabulously laughing, and I actually thought I saw a scar him saying it. And I said, she did? And he said, oh, honey, on one of the visits, I went with her to visit your mom and you kids. And you were wearing sweatpants, and I don't think you had a shirt on, and you were wearing a baseball hat, throwing a ball around and calling yourself Bob. And your grandma said, Alan, we have another one. My grandma's gaydar was spot on. So when my mom and I talked again, I was very eager to learn more about my grandmother, though the expectation was that my mom and I would process what I had just told her. But Peaches freed. That's just how I felt. I felt great. So when we talked, I said, Ma, actually, can we talk about, remember that thing you said about Grandma being gay? Could we talk about that? And I told her that I had spoken to my great uncle Al and how fun it was to hear from him. And she said, Al, he always makes it sound like it was a party, Amanda. It was actually really difficult. And that night, I got my first education in the history of queer people in America through my first teacher, my mom, telling me about the atrocities that her mother, my grandmother, experienced for being gay. She said, Bapchi, which is what we called Grandma Coochie's mom, Bapchi Coochie. She said, Bapchi committed your grandmother to a mental institution twice for being gay. And she said, Amanda, your grandma was a drinker, but there were a lot of drinkers then, and most of them didn't end up in mental institutions. And my mom told me about my grandmother's experiences being institutionalized because my grandma's mom didn't understand, was ashamed, thought there was something wrong with my grandmother for being attracted to women. And pretty much in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, that was all it took for an adult to be committed against their will to a mental institution. My mom and I spoke a lot that night. We speak endlessly, and I'm so grateful to her for opening up to me about something that's very painful for her to talk about. And I started to research this place, Marlborough State Hospital, infamous for corruption, abusing patients, and what amounts to torturing my grandmother by forcing her to take into her body high voltage, extremely painful electric shocks as therapy about 60 years ago. As her granddaughter, as a queer person, I felt very disturbed hearing this. My grandma was bright, articulate, sophisticated, real complicated, and incredibly funny, and a beautiful human being. And she didn't deserve to be tortured for being gay, and she didn't belong in a mental institution for being gay. And no lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, intersex, androgynous, asexual, pansexual, and I am happy to continue going on for as many letters and as many words as are required to cover all of us, because acceptance is such a wonderful use of the breath, and because none of us deserves to be harmed in any way for just being who we are. And I got the feeling my grandma felt the same way. I started to have dreams that indicated to me that my grandma was not quite at peace, and frankly, neither was I about all of this. As though this hospital, there was unfinished business there. And I wondered how I could make some kind of offering of peace to this place that had now been shut down and was an abandoned 500 acres in her Pride and Joy, New Jersey. In April, I took my beloved, brilliant, spectacularly beautiful girlfriend to New York City for her birthday. Coincidentally, my beloved and my Grandma Coochie share the same birthday. So I told my girlfriend all about my grandmother on this weekend where my grandma would have turned 90 years old. And without skipping a beat, my girlfriend said, "How far is it from here? Let's go." Now, when your person wants to walk with you at sundown onto the abandoned grounds of a creepy mental institution to bring peace to the soul of your deceased grandmother, note to self, keep her forever. I intend to. So we drove and parked my truck next to the cemetery where unclaimed patients who had died in the facility were buried. We walked along the road until a chain link fence blocked off the periphery of the grounds. And she and I committed one of our first misdemeanors together when, when she found the hole in the fence and we crawled through it to the other side onto the grounds of the hospital. We continued down the road, walking quietly together, holding hands, noticing the sun coming down on the overgrown vegetation and 2 deer that had stirred, some rabbits, turkeys, small blossoms of flowers, and just listened to each other breathing and walking down the road until we came to a clearing where the main building of the hospital would have been. Mercifully, it has since been razed, and all of the grounds will be turned into a state park. No doubt the history of abuse there will be buried. In the clearing, there were shards of window and mangled metal from inside of the walls and hunks of the brick that held the building. And we found a cornerstone of the brick. It was small, though it weighed about 60 pounds, so hefty. And I decided that I would take it back with me as a reminder of how far we have come and how far we have to go. Rest in peace. Helen Theodora Coochie Becker. Happy Pride.